Captain Elias Rowan had been silent for 6 hours. On the bridge of the Vigilant Mercy, silence was unusual. The ship hummed with life, quantum drives whispering through folded space, holographic displays pulsing with alien scripts, the quiet footfalls of crew from 6 different species. But Elias sat in the command chair like a statue carved from old grief, his dark eyes fixed on the starless void ahead. High Curator Selkara watched him from across the bridge. She was not human. No one would ever mistake her for one. Selkara stood nearly 7 feet tall, her crystalline skin refracting the ship's lights into soft prisms. Her 4 eyes, arranged in a gentle arc, were ancient, patient, and trained to read civilizations the way others read books. She was a keeper of histories for the Concord of Worlds, a being whose species had ended wars simply by understanding their origins. Humans, however, remained an anomaly. They were new to the galactic stage. Loud, emotional, violently compassionate, capable of both horrifying cruelty and impossible kindness, often at the same time. And Elias Rowan embodied that contradiction more than any human Selkara had studied. She had reviewed his file, orphaned by a planetary collapse, veteran of 3 frontier wars, decorated for bravery, known for defying orders to evacuate civilians, alien civilians, under enemy fire. He was polite, gentle, and deeply broken. Selkara had asked humans many questions over her long life, but this one slipped out before she could stop herself. "Captain Rowan," she said softly, her translator weaving warmth into her tone. "Who hurt you?" The bridge went still. Even the ship seemed to listen. Elias did not turn. For a long moment, Selkara wondered if she had committed a cultural offense. Humans were sensitive about personal pain, yet paradoxically eager to bleed for strangers. Finally, Elias exhaled. "That," he said quietly, "is a long story." Selkara inclined her head. "I have time," she replied. She had no idea how profoundly that answer would change her, or the fate of her people. 2. A species that learned pain early. They spoke later, in the observation chamber. Stars drifted past the wide, transparent alloy, distant and indifferent. Selkara sat opposite Elias at a low table designed to accommodate multiple anatomies. Between them rested a pot of Terran tea, an offering he had insisted on preparing himself. "Humans ask that question a lot," Elias said, staring into the swirling liquid. "Usually about aliens, about enemies." Selkara folded her long fingers together. "I ask because pain leaves patterns," she said. "Your species carries many." Elias smiled faintly. It did not reach his eyes. "Then let me start at the beginning," he said. "Not my beginning. Ours." He spoke of Earth, of a planet beautiful and brutal, where survival had never been guaranteed, of predators, diseases, famine, and natural disasters that wiped out millions without malice or reason, of how humans learned early that the universe did not care if they lived. "So we learned to care for each other," Elias said. "Sometimes badly, sometimes violently, but we tried." He spoke of wars fought over land, over belief, over fear, of how humans hurt humans long before they ever met alien life. Selkara listened, recording nothing. This was not history for archives. This was confession. And then, Elias continued, voice tightening, "We reached the stars." Selkara already knew this part. Humanity's first contact had been messy. Borders misunderstood. Treaties broken. The Concord still debated whether humanity was a risk or a resource. But Elias did not speak of diplomacy. He spoke of colonies. "My parents were terraform engineers," he said. "They worked on New Dawn, a fringe world. not important enough for heavy protection. Selkara felt something shift within her chest cavity as Elias' hands clenched. The star flared early, he said. Radiation storm. The shields failed. Evacuation ships were delayed. His voice dropped. I was 12. They put me on the last shuttle. My mother promised she'd be right behind me. Selkara had lived long enough to know where this was going. She wasn't, Elias finished. Silence filled the chamber like a held breath. 3. The shape of survival. Selkara did not interrupt. Elias told her about the orphan flotillas, ships full of children evacuated from lost colonies. About how the Concorde's aid arrived too late. About how humanity learned that space was not kinder than Earth. It was just bigger. I grew up in stations, he said. Metal walls. Emergency lights. Other kids screaming at night. Selkara's species reproduced rarely. Their young were guarded with near-religious devotion. The idea of unprotected children drifting between stars was unthinkable. Who hurt you? She asked again more softly. Elias looked up at her at last. Everyone who didn't mean to, he said. And some who did. He spoke of recruiters who saw traumatized children as future soldiers. Of training academies that turned grief into discipline. Of commanders who praised sacrifice but never paid its cost. They taught us that pain was useful, Elias said. That loss made us stronger. Selkara felt an unfamiliar heat behind her eyes. Her people believed pain was a malfunction, something to be eliminated through balance and foresight. They had nearly erased suffering from their civilization. Yet humans seemed to carry it like a tool. Why didn't you break? She asked. Elias shrugged. I did, he said simply. I just kept moving anyway. 4. The war that made him captain, the war that earned Elias's command, had a name Selkara recognized. The Carval Incursion. A brutal expansionist empire. Efficient. Logical. Unconcerned with civilian casualties. Selkara had served as a diplomatic observer during its aftermath. Entire systems reduced to ash. I was a lieutenant then, Elias said. We were ordered to fall back. Tactical retreat. Selkara watched his jaw tighten. But there was a city still transmitting, he continued. Not human. Polari. Families. The Polari were gentle amphibious beings, famed artists and singers. The Carval were glassing the ocean, Elias said. My commander said it was too late. Selkara knew this story. It was taught in Concorde ethics seminars. Elias disobeyed. He took a single frigate into a kill zone, overloaded its shields, and used the ship itself as a barrier while evacuation shuttles escaped. Hundreds survived. The frigate was destroyed. Elias survived by sheer accident. They asked me why I did it, he said. At the tribunal. Selkara remembered the official answer. Strategic empathy. What did you tell them? She asked. Elias met her gaze. I told them I remembered what it felt like to be left behind. Something in Selkara's ancient heart fractured. A question that echoed for days after that conversation. Selkara could not focus on her duties. She watched the human crew with new eyes. She saw how they checked on injured aliens before themselves. How they joked in the face of danger. How they formed bonds quickly, fiercely, as if loss were always just one mission away. She requested access to deeper human archives, personal journals, unfiltered war footage, recovery interviews. What she found unsettled her. Humans did not simply endure trauma. They translated it. Pain became stories. Loss became rituals. Grief became purpose. Where Selkara's people had engineered suffering out of existence, humans had woven it into identity. When the Vigilant Mercy received a distress call from the Lithari Expanse, Selkara volunteered to accompany the away team. The Lithari were a newly contacted species. Their world was under attack by raiders. Evacuation incomplete. As the ship dropped from fold space, Selkara felt something unfamiliar.
Fear.
"Captain," she said, "this situation mirrors your own history." Elias nodded. "That's why we're here," he replied. 6. The choice no algorithm would make the raiders had blockaded the planet's only spaceport. Standard Concord protocol recommended withdrawal and negotiation. Elias ignored it. "We don't have time," he said. "They're targeting shelters." Selkara watched him issue orders, precise, calm, decisive. But beneath it, she sensed the old wounds driving every calculation. They broke the blockade at great cost. On the surface, chaos reigned. Smoke, sirens, screaming aliens huddled in shattered structures. Selkara followed Elias into the ruins. A Lithari child, six-limbed and trembling, was trapped beneath debris. Raiders closing in. Elias did not hesitate. He shielded the child with his own body as plasma fire tore through the air. Selkara raised her energy field too late. Elias was already bleeding. They escaped barely. Later, in the medical bay, Selkara stood beside his bed. "Why?" she asked again, quietly. "You did not know them." Elias' voice was weak, but steady. "That's the point," he said. "No one helped me because they knew me. They helped when they remembered someone else." Selkara felt her worldview unravel. 7. Understanding the wound, Elias recovered. The Lithari were saved. The Concord hailed the mission as a success. But Selkara requested something unprecedented. She petitioned the High Circle to revise humanity's classification. Not as a volatile species, not as a strategic asset, but as guardians born of suffering. In her address, she spoke not of battles or treaties, but of pain. "Humans are dangerous," she said before the assembled elders. "Not because they seek harm, but because they remember it." She told them Elias' story. The orphan flotillas. The lost colonies. The children left behind. Where we removed pain, Selkara concluded, humans learned from it. And they choose again and again not to pass it on. The chamber was silent. The motion passed. Humanity's role in the Concord changed forever. 8. The answer that lingered on the eve of Selkara's departure from the Vigilant Mercy. She found Elias in the observation chamber again. Stars drifted by as they had before. "I never thanked you," she said. "For what?" Elias asked. "For answering me," Selkara replied. "Most would not." Elias smiled, tired but genuine. "Most never ask," he said. Selkara hesitated, then spoke the truth she had come to understand. "Your pain did not make you weak," she said. "It made you a shelter." Elias looked away, emotion flickering across his face. "I wish it hadn't been necessary," he said. "So do I," Selkara replied. They stood together in silence. Two species shaped by different philosophies, bound now by understanding. 9. What humans gave the stars years later, Selkara would record a final addendum to the Concord archives. It would not be a law or treaty. It would be a warning and a promise. "If you ask a human who hurt them," she wrote, "listen carefully. Because their answer is not an accusation. It is an origin story. And if you threaten the helpless in front of them, they will remember." And somewhere among the stars, Captain Elias Rowan continued to listen to distress calls no one else answered. Not because he was unbroken, but because he knew exactly what it meant to be hurt, and chose every day to be kind anyway. The distress call came 3 years later. It did not carry coordinates at first, only a fractured transmission repeating in a dozen languages. Panic. Static. A child's voice breaking into sobs. Selkara recognized the frequency immediately. It was a Concord relay. It was hers. The world was called Illith Prime, a crystalline planet whose cities floated on magnetized seas. Selkara's people had helped shape it centuries ago. It was meant to be untouchable, protected by treaties, by reputation, by the quiet understanding that some places were sacred. Someone had decided otherwise. Pirates. Not mindless raiders, but organized, heavily armed, and very human. Selkara stood in the command hall of her people, her crystalline form rigid with disbelief as reports flooded in. Civilian shelters breached. Evacuation routes severed. Thousands trapped. The High Circle debated. They always debated. Probability matrices spun. Risk assessments glowed. The same cold logic that had preserved Selkara's species for millennia now became a cage. Intervention risks escalation, one elder intoned. Our fleets are not positioned, said another. Selkara listened, then did something no curator had done in recorded history. She turned off the chamber recorders. I know someone, she said quietly, who will come. The elders stared. He is human, she continued, and he will not ask if it is efficient. 11. A human answer. Captain Elias Rowan received the call while overseeing repairs on a refugee station near the Vale. He listened in silence as Selkara spoke, not as a curator now, but as someone afraid. They are my people, she finished. And I hear your voice every time the alarms sound. Elias closed his eyes. How long? He asked. Hours, Selkara said. Not days. That was all he needed. The Vigilant Mercy jumped without waiting for Concord approval. When they arrived at Illith Prime, the sight was worse than any projection. Floating cities burned. Shields failed one by one. And at the heart of it all, human ships. Not soldiers. Not governments. Desperate men and women who had learned cruelty from a universe that never apologized. Elias stood on the bridge, hands steady. Open all channels, he said. Selkara watched as his image filled pirate displays across the system. This is Captain Elias Rowan, he said. You're hurting people who never hurt you. Laughter crackled back. Elias leaned forward. I know what that means, he continued. I know what it feels like to be ignored, to be left behind, to lose everything and be told it was acceptable loss. The laughter stopped. But hear me carefully, Elias said, voice steel-wrapped compassion. You don't get to turn that pain into permission. Silence. Then one ship powered down. Then another. Some didn't listen. Those ships were stopped. Not destroyed, but disabled. Boarded. Taken alive. Because Elias remembered something else, too. That monsters were usually made, not born. 12. The question, asked again. When it was over, Illith Prime still floated. Scarred, but alive. Selkara found Elias standing alone on a ruined balcony, overlooking the sea. Smoke curled into starlight. Emergency lights reflected off crystal waves. You came, she said. Elias nodded. I always do. Selkara hesitated, then asked the question again, softer than before, changed by years of understanding. Who hurt you, human? Elias thought for a long time. Then he answered differently. People who were hurt before me, he said. And people who thought pain had to keep moving. Selkara stepped closer. And why did you stop it here? She asked. Elias looked out over the survivors, her people, being lifted to safety. Because someone once asked me that question, he said. And didn't turn away from the answer. Selkara felt something bloom within her, a realization so profound it felt like grief and hope sharing the same space. 13. What the galaxy learned. The Concord would later mark the defense of Illith Prime as a turning point. Not because of the battle, but because of the precedent. Humans were no longer placed on the edges of decision-making. They were invited into ethical councils. into first contact missions, into crisis response leadership. Because the galaxy finally understood something simple and terrifying. Humans did not protect life because it was logical. They protected it because they remembered what it felt like to lose it. Selkara recorded one final entry for the archives. "Pain does not always seek to be healed," she wrote. "Sometimes it seeks to be understood. And when it is, it becomes mercy." 14. The answer that changed her forever. Years later, when young curators asked Selkara why she trusted humans so deeply, she would smile, a rare, refracted expression of warmth. Because, she told them, they asked the universe why it hurt them and chose not to answer in kind. And somewhere, always moving toward the next impossible signal, Captain Elias Rowan listened. Because he knew pain, and because he refused to let it be the end of the story.